Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Your choices
somehow become the focal point of the entire world's conversation.
I will not accept that.
Superman 2025. Complete explanations and in-depth analysis of the film. The following is a comprehensive analysis and explanation of the film Superman 2025. James Gunn's Superman arrives as a deliberate course correction for the iconic hero on screen, rebooting the franchise and establishing the cornerstone of the new DC Universe, DCU. The film has garnered a generally positive critical reception for its earnest, hopeful tone and strong performances, while sparking lively debate among broader audiences regarding its specific narrative and stylistic choices. At its narrative core, the film presents a Superman who is 3 years into his public career, a young man still navigating the weight of his destiny. The plot is catalyzed when he intervenes in a complex geopolitical conflict, an act that draws the focused hatred of tech billionaire Lex Luthor. Luthor's campaign of manipulation forms the film's primary conflict, but the true emotional crux is a devastating personal revelation for Clark Kent. The film's most significant narrative twist recontextualizes Superman's very origin. Clark discovers that his birth parents, Jor-El and Lara, did not send him to Earth to be its savior, but rather its conqueror, a biological weapon meant to subjugate humanity. This revelation forces Clark into an existential crisis, directly challenging the values instilled in him by Jonathan and Martha Kentucky. A central thematic analysis of the film identifies heroism as a conscious choice, not an inherent destiny. This idea is rigorously tested by the truth of his Kryptonian lineage. The screenplay argues, primarily through the steadfast wisdom of Jonathan Kent, that our actions define us far more than our ancestry or innate power. Superman must actively choose to protect a world he was seemingly bred to destroy. This theme of choice extends to the human characters surrounding him. Lois Lane, Mr. Terrific, and others are portrayed as heroes in their own right, using intellect, integrity, and courage to fight for truth. Their presence reinforces the film's message that heroism is accessible to all who choose to act morally. Director James Gunn deliberately crafts a more vulnerable Superman than recent cinematic incarnations. This Kal-El can be injured, can lose battles, and crucially, requires aid from allies, including his superpowered dog, Krypto. This vulnerability is not a weakness, but a narrative tool to enhance relatability and underscore the importance of community and connection. His relationships are the emotional bedrock of the story. His romance with Lois Lane is described as madly in love, yet complicated by her journalistic skepticism and his personal secrets. Furthermore, his bond with his adoptive parents remains a grounding, formative influence, highlighting the nurture-over-nature argument at the story's heart. The film operates powerfully as an immigrant allegory, a theme Gunn highlighted prior to release. While the term is never uttered, the narrative embodies it through the public's fear of the other and Luthor's xenophobic rhetoric against an unaccountable alien power. Superman's journey is one of finding belonging in a world not his own by embracing its ideals. Beyond any political subtext, many analyses pinpoint a refreshing moral simplicity at the film's core. A defining moment comes when Lois tells Superman, "You think everyone you've ever met is beautiful." This line encapsulates the film's ethos, an unwavering belief in the inherent, equal value of every human life, which Superman strives to protect and embody. Critical reception largely praised this optimistic approach, with reviewers celebrating the film's earnestness, vibrant color palette, and chemistry between the leads as a welcome return to a more hopeful superhero archetype. The performance of David Corenswet was frequently cited for striking a compelling balance between iconic strength and approachable humanity. Audience response, however, has been more divided, creating a fascinating point of analysis. Supporters champion the film's emotional resonance and fun, hopeful spirit, feeling it captures the essence of the character. Detractors often cite an inconsistent tone, juggling earnest drama with Gunn's trademark comedic beats, and a plot some feel is cluttered by introducing numerous DCU supporting characters. The character of Superman himself, as portrayed by David Corenswet, is analyzed as a 25-year-old who is more established than a rookie but younger and less weathered than previous versions. Gunn's description of him as kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned is directly reflected in a performance that prioritizes compassion and decency as forms of strength. Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane is analyzed as a pivotal force, not merely a love interest. She is a fiercely intelligent, Pulitzer-winning reporter whose skepticism and investigative drive are crucial to the plot. Her relationship with Clark is a dynamic partnership where she actively challenges him and helps uncover Luthor's conspiracy. Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor is interpreted as a villain of cold, calculating intellect. His motivation is an obsessive hatred rooted in a desire for human autonomy and a deep-seated fear of an uncontrollable alien variable. Holt plays him with a simmering intensity, focusing on psychological manipulation over physical threat. The supporting cast introduces key figures for the nascent DCU. The Justice Gang, including Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, and Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, represent an institutional and often contentious response to Superman's unilateral actions. Antagonists like Ultraman and the Engineer serve as physical threats executing Luthor's machinations. From a world-building perspective, the film successfully lays the groundwork for an interconnected universe while telling a complete Superman story. The inclusion of characters like Metamorpho and the confirmation of other heroes operating in this world opens numerous narrative doors for future projects. The film's financial performance, achieving over $600 million worldwide against a $225 million budget, is considered a solid foundation for the new DCU. It demonstrates a viable audience for this tonal direction, ensuring the planned narrative continuity will move forward. The sequel, Man of Tomorrow, is already in development, with Gunn describing it as much a Lex movie as it is a Superman movie. This suggests a deepening of the philosophical conflict between the two icons, potentially exploring Luthor's origins and his twisted vision for humanity's future. Analyses of the ending suggest a Superman who has fully, irrevocably chosen his path. By rejecting his genetic destiny and defeating the threats arrayed against him, he embodies the choice of hope and protection. His public standing is perhaps more fragile, but his personal conviction is stronger, setting a clear character trajectory for future stories. The film's visual language is a subject of analysis, deliberately moving away from desaturated color grades to a brighter, more comic book-inspired palette. This aesthetic choice reinforces the thematic shift towards optimism and classic heroism. The score and soundtrack are also noted for evoking a sense of wonder and heroism, utilizing thematic motifs that recall classic adventure films while establishing new audio identities for the characters and the world of Metropolis. In conclusion, Superman 2025 can be analyzed as a film that deliberately recalibrates the last son of Krypton for a new era. It argues for the power of choice, the strength and vulnerability, and the beauty of simple kindness. While audience reactions showcase a diversity of opinion on its execution, the film stands as a confident, heartfelt reintroduction of Superman as a beacon of hope, successfully establishing a cornerstone for the stories to come in the DC universe. The film's narrative structure merits deep analysis for its deliberate framing of Clark's internal conflict as a compelling psychological thriller. This approach cleverly uses the superhero genre to explore profound questions of nature versus nurture and predestined purpose. Each act builds upon this central dilemma, with external threats like Luthor and Ultraman serving as manifestations of Clark's internal struggle against his own supposed destiny. The screenplay ensures that every action sequence, no matter how spectacular, is intrinsically tied to the protagonist's emotional journey and evolving sense of self. Lois Lane's investigative subplot is not merely a supporting thread, but the essential human mechanism that drives the story's central mystery forward. Her relentless pursuit of truth, first regarding Superman's intentions and then targeting Lex Luthor's manipulations, provides the narrative engine that pulls both the audience and Clark deeper into the conspiracy. This role reinforces her as an equal protagonist whose courage is of a different, yet no less vital, kind than Superman's physical might. Her journalism acts as a moral compass and a weapon against corruption in a world newly introduced to metahuman threats. Lex Luthor's characterization represents a significant and modern departure from more flamboyant portrayals, focusing instead on the insidious power of information warfare and soft influence. His hatred is portrayed not as madness, but as a twisted form of intellectual elitism and human purity ideology. He weaponizes media narratives and public fear, making him a uniquely contemporary villain whose threat cannot be simply punched away. This depiction comments powerfully on real-world dynamics of misinformation and the demonization of the other for personal and political gain. The portrayal of Krypton and Jor-El's true purpose provides a devastating philosophical counterpoint to the classic lore. This revelation transforms Superman's heritage from a tragic loss of a noble civilization into an active burden of genocidal intent. It deepens his isolation while making his ultimate choice to protect Earth exponentially more meaningful. The film suggests that overcoming one's lineage, especially one of such terrifying power, is the ultimate testament to free will and moral character. Jonathan and Martha Kent's roles are expanded beyond mere tragic backstory, serving as the unwavering ethical foundation for Clark's entire worldview. Their scenes are infused with a palpable sense of love, anxiety, and steadfast belief in their son's humanity. They represent the quiet, everyday goodness that Superman ultimately fights to preserve, grounding the epic stakes in tangible emotional reality. Their influence is shown to be the decisive factor that overrides his biological programming. The visual and thematic contrast between Smallville and Metropolis is employed with great intentionality throughout the film. Smallville is presented with warm, earthy tones and wide, peaceful shots, embodying safety, simplicity, and core values. Metropolis is a gleaming, bustling kaleidoscope of Art Deco inspiration and modern glass, representing complexity, ambition, and both the best and worst of human progress. Superman physically and emotionally navigates between these two worlds, constantly reconciling the farm boy with the global icon. David Corenswet's performance is meticulously calibrated to embody a specific midpoint in the hero's journey, capturing a blend of settled confidence and lingering uncertainty. His physical presence communicates immense power held in gentle check, while his expressions often reveal the thoughtful, sometimes weary, young man beneath the cape. The performance excels in quieter moments where Clark observes humanity, his face reflecting a genuine fascination and affection that validates Lois's beautiful observation. Rachel Brosnahan imbues Lois Lane with a brilliant, fiery agency that never slips into mere stubbornness or caricature. Her intelligence is her primary superpower, demonstrated through dogged research, incisive questioning, and strategic thinking. The chemistry with Corenswet is built on mutual respect and intellectual challenge, creating a romance that feels earned and adult. She is never a damsel, but rather a partner whose work in many ways protects Superman as much as he protects the city. Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor is a study in controlled, narcissistic rage, his menace derived from his absolute belief in his own superiority and righteousness. He views Superman not just as an alien, but as an affront to human achievement and autonomy, a cheat code that undermines the value of human struggle and ingenuity. Holt conveys this through chilling calmness, subtle facial tics, and the cold precision of his plans, making him far more unsettling than a roaring antagonist. The introduction of the Justice Gang serves a dual narrative and world-building function, immediately establishing that Superman is not alone in this new DCU. Their contentious dynamic with him creates instant conflict and explores institutional versus individual approaches to heroism. Their presence also naturally expands the scope of the story, forcing Superman to consider his role within a broader ecosystem of powerful beings and how his actions set precedents for all of them. Krypto the Superdog is far more than a comedic relief element. He is a narrative symbol of Clark's bifurcated identity. As the last living remnant of Krypton that is unburdened by its dark history, Krypto represents pure, instinctual loyalty and the uncomplicated joy of his powers. Their bond highlights Superman's capacity for love and connection across species, and Krypto's assistance in battles visually reinforces the theme that even the strongest need allies and family. The film's action sequences are choreographed and shot with a clear emphasis on consequence and physics, despite the superhuman elements. When Superman is hit, the impact feels substantial, selling his vulnerability. His movements often prioritize protecting citizens and containing collateral damage over flashy offense, visually communicating his priority of preservation. The battles against Ultraman and the Engineer are as much ideological clashes as physical ones, representing the violent enforcement of Krypton's will and humanity's corrupted ambition, respectively. James Gunn's directorial signature is evident in the film's rhythmic balance of grandiose spectacle and genuine human-scale moments. However, this tonal blend is notably more restrained than his previous work, with the humor often arising from characterful sincerity rather than outright parody. The earnestness of the central performances anchors the film, allowing moments of levity to feel organic, such as Clark's awkwardness or the Justice Gang's bureaucratic squabbles, without undermining the emotional stakes. The production design of Metropolis is a character in itself, a bold reimagining that pulls from the streamlined futurism of the classic Fleischer cartoons and the bustling density of a real-world megacity. The Daily Planet bullpen crackles with energy, and LexCorp's sleek, sterile towers visually reflect Luthor's cold worldview. This environment provides a vibrant, living stage that feels both mythic and tangible, a place worthy of a superhero's protection. Costume design plays a crucial symbolic role, particularly in Superman's suit. The return to brighter, more saturated colors and textured fabric is a clear visual statement of hope and classic heroism. The slight weathering and the inclusion of the Kent family blanket material in the cape's interior lining are subtle touches that root the iconic uniform in personal history and love, making it an heirloom rather than just alien armor. Michael Giacchino's musical score is an essential emotional component, weaving together distinct themes for Clark, Superman, Lois, and Luthor. Superman's theme is notably aspirational and heroic, built on brass and soaring strings, but often intertwined with a more poignant, questioning melody for Clark. Luthor's motif is colder, utilizing metallic percussion and dissonant layers, creating an audio representation of his calculated and inhuman perspective. The film's pacing carefully balances its sprawling narrative, dedicating significant time to Clark's relationships and internal struggle amidst the rising action. The first act takes its time establishing his daily life and the world's perception of him before Luthor's plot fully unfurls. This patient build-up ensures that when the major revelations and conflicts occur, they carry substantial emotional weight because the audience is invested in this specific incarnation of the character and his connections. Public perception of Superman within the film's diegesis is a constantly shifting entity, meticulously manipulated by Luthor and honestly reported on by Lois. We see the full spectrum of reaction, from adoration and religious symbolism to fear-mongering and protests. This media satire is sharp, commenting on how real-world figures are flattened into symbols and how easily truth can be distorted by those controlling the narrative, making Superman's fight for trust as important as his fight against villains. The philosophical conflict at the heart of the film is richly developed through dialogue and juxtaposition. Luther espouses a brutal, social Darwinist view of human progress achieved through struggle, seeing Superman as a corrupting shortcut that makes humanity soft. Jonathan Kent and Lois, conversely, represent a philosophy that values compassion, cooperation, and the inherent dignity of life. Superman becomes the living embodiment of this debate, his every action an argument for the latter. The depiction of Clark's powers focuses on their sensory and emotional impact as much as their physical spectacle. The film uses sound design and point-of-view shots to convey the overwhelming nature of his superhearing and X-ray vision, portraying them as burdens he must learn to filter. This presentation emphasizes the responsibility and occasional loneliness that comes with his abilities, making his choice to use them for good an active, ongoing discipline. The relationship between Clark and his mother, Martha Kent, is given beautiful and resonant depth in this iteration. Their interactions are filled with unspoken understanding, shared grief for Jonathan, and a mutual determination to honor his legacy. Martha is portrayed not as a worrying figure from the past, but as an active emotional anchor and a source of wisdom, reminding Clark of the simple human connections that justify his cosmic struggle. Luther's creation, Ultraman, functions as a dark mirror and a physical manifestation of the Kryptonian destiny Clark rejects. This clone, devoid of humanity or mercy, is what Clark could have become, a perfect weapon. Their confrontation is thus cathartic, a literal battle between the person Clark was bred to be and the man he chose to become. Ultraman's defeat symbolizes Clark's final, violent rejection of his genetic programming. The engineer, as a human willingly fused with alien technology, represents another path, humanity's ambition corrupted by Luther's ideology. She is the embodiment of progress, without ethics, a weaponized human who has sacrificed her humanity for power, standing in direct contrast to Superman, an alien who sacrifices power to embrace humanity. Their conflict explores the dangers of pursuing advancement without a moral framework. The film's climax is notably not just a victory of strength, but a victory of ideology and public faith. Superman defeats his physical foes, but his true triumph is revealing Luther's conspiracy to the world through evidence gathered by Lois and the Justice Gang. This restores a measure of public trust and proves that truth and justice are interdependent. It validates working within human systems and alongside other heroes to achieve a common good. The final scenes powerfully affirm Superman's choice. A quiet moment at the Kent farm, followed by a hopeful sunrise over Metropolis with Lois at his side, visually closes the loop on his internal conflict. He is shown to have found his place, not as a god or a conqueror, but as a protector and a participant. He has integrated his identities, no longer torn between Clark and Superman, but existing as a complete person who is both. In establishing the DCU, the film plants seeds with remarkable subtlety. References to Batman in Gotham, Themyscira, and Atlantean diplomacy are woven into background news reports or offhand comments, creating a sense of a vast, lived-in world without distracting from the central story. This approach makes the universe feel organic and already in motion, full of stories waiting to be told beyond this one. The mid-credits scene is a masterclass in tantalizing future narrative threads without resorting to a simple cameo barrage. It features a chilling conversation between Luther in his cell and a mysterious, authoritative figure, hinting at the formation of a future Legion of Doom. This moment promises that Luther's intellect remains a potent threat and that Superman's ideological war is far from over, setting a compelling stage for the sequel. Overall, the film's legacy will likely be its successful reclamation of Superman's core ethos for a modern cinematic audience. It argues persuasively that optimism and kindness are not naivete, but radical acts of strength. By focusing on the character's humanity, vulnerability, and conscious moral choices, it delivers a superhero story that is both spectacular and intimately profound, providing a solid ethical cornerstone for the entire DC universe to build upon. The film's central ethical dilemma is rendered with remarkable sophistication, moving beyond a simple good versus evil binary. Clark's crisis of identity upon learning his genocidal programming forces him to question every instinct and altruistic impulse. This internal conflict is visually mirrored in scenes where he grapples with his reflection, seeing both the Kansas farm boy and the potential world breaker. The narrative suggests that true heroism is not the absence of doubt, but the courageous decision to act morally despite profound existential uncertainty. This philosophical weight elevates the entire production beyond standard blockbuster fare. Lois Lane's journalistic methodology is portrayed with an authenticity rarely seen in superhero cinema, grounding the fantastical plot in a gritty procedural reality. Her investigation unfolds through painstaking research, source cultivation, and daring confrontations, showcasing journalism as a vital civic duty. The screenplay cleverly parallels her pursuit of truth with Clark's physical heroism, presenting them as complementary forces necessary for a just society. Her unwavering commitment to facts in a climate of manufactured fear becomes its own powerful act of rebellion against Luthor's corrosive influence. Lex Luthor's antagonism is rooted in a perverted form of humanism that makes him a uniquely compelling and contemporary threat. He frames his xenophobia as a protection of human potential, arguing that Superman's mere presence stifles innovation and moral growth. This ideology is given texture through his corporate empire, which produces advanced technology meant to elevate humanity on its own terms. His character serves as a dark critique of technocratic arrogance and the dangerous myth of self-made superiority, viewing compassion as a weakness to be engineered out of existence. The reinterpretation of Krypton's purpose represents a bold narrative gamble that pays significant thematic dividends. By transforming Superman's origin from a benevolent salvation mission into a colonialist directive, the story massively raises the stakes of his choice. This revelation reframes his entire life on Earth as a beautiful accident, a testament to the power of nurture and environment over grim biological determinism. It introduces a profound layer of survivor's guilt that Clark must overcome, not by forgetting his heritage, but by actively repudiating its worst intentions. Jonathan Kent's influence is felt not through grand speeches alone, but through embedded flashbacks that show the quiet, daily lessons of decency. Scenes of teaching Clark to control his strength, to listen patiently, and to value every life regardless of size or status form the bedrock of the man's morality. His passing is not used as mere motivation for rage, but as a lasting reminder of the peaceful strength Clark strives to embody. This father-son dynamic posits that the most important power Jonathan ever gave his son was an unshakable ethical compass. The visual storytelling expertly utilizes scale to communicate character perspective and emotional state. Low-angle shots looking up at Superman emphasize the public's awe and the burden of their expectations, while intimate close-ups in the Kent home or with Lois highlight his personal vulnerabilities. Sweeping aerials of Metropolis convey the scope of his responsibility, and claustrophobic framing during Luthor's scenes reflects his controlling, limited worldview. This deliberate cinematography constantly reinforces the film's core themes of connection and perspective. David Corenswet's embodiment of Superman achieves a delicate balance between otherworldly grace and approachable clumsiness. His posture shifts palpably between the confident, open-shouldered hero and the slightly slouched, observant Clark Kent. This physical transformation is subtle yet distinct, selling the duality not as a mere disguise but as an authentic expression of different facets of his personality. His performance finds profound resonance in moments of stillness, where his face conveys a deep, melancholic love for the world he has sworn to protect. Rachel Brosnahan crafts a Lois Lane, who is the intellectual and emotional anchor of the narrative. Her tenacity is matched by a deep empathy, evident when she interviews ordinary citizens affected by Superman's battles. She challenges Clark not out of cynicism, but from a principled belief that power must be questioned to be trusted. Their romantic development is earned through shared risk and mutual revelation, building a partnership where vulnerability is not a liability but the foundation of their strength together. Nicholas Hoult portrays Luthor's menace through a chilling, intellectual vacancy where human emotion should reside. His hatred is clinical, a systems analysis that identifies Superman as an unacceptable external variable. This makes his actions more terrifying, as they are executed without passion but with the cold efficiency of a logic puzzle. Holt excels in boardroom and laboratory scenes, where his softly spoken rhetoric belies the monstrous scale of his ambitions, presenting evil as a series of rational, incremental decisions. The Justice Gang's inclusion is deftly handled to serve the world building without fracturing the narrative focus. Their initial antagonism towards Superman arises from legitimate concerns about unilateral power and global accountability. Their eventual, grudging alliance demonstrates the film's thesis that collaboration is stronger than solitary might. Each member gets a moment to showcase their unique abilities and perspectives, from Mr. Terrific's tactical genius to Hawkgirl's warrior pragmatism, enriching the texture of this nascent superhero community. Krypto's role transcends simple fan service, functioning as a living symbol of uncomplicated loyalty and the joy of existence. His bond with Clark provides silent, wordless comfort in moments of intense isolation, representing a tether to a simpler time. In action sequences, Krypto is not merely a pet but a genuine partner, his abilities extending Clark's reach and showcasing a teamwork born of pure trust. This dynamic reinforces the theme that family, in all its forms, is Superman's ultimate source of power. The film's action philosophy prioritizes rescue and damage mitigation over destructive spectacle. When Superman engages Ultraman, his movements are constantly diverting energy blasts away from populated areas and shoring up collapsing structures. This choreography visually communicates his core priority, the preservation of life. It creates a unique superhero action vocabulary where the measure of victory is not the defeat of the foe, but the number of civilians saved during the conflict, making every punch carry ethical weight. James Gunn's directorial hand is evident in the film's vibrant color palette and rhythmic pacing, but tempered by a sincere emotional gravity. The humor, when it arrives, stems from character authenticity, like Clark's awkwardness at a Daily Planet party or Guy Gardner's brash interjections, rather than meta-commentary. This balance allows the film to celebrate the inherent wonder of its premise without winking at the audience, fully committing to the earnest belief that a man flying in a cape can represent the best of us. Metropolis itself is a production design triumph, a gleaming city of tomorrow that feels both nostalgically classic and urgently modern. The Daily Planet's bustling newsroom hums with pre-digital urgency, a temple to truth-seeking. In stark contrast, LexCorp's architecture is all sterile angles and reflective surfaces, a physical manifestation of Luthor's cold, narcissistic intellect. This environment doesn't just serve as a backdrop. It actively participates in the story's themes of transparency versus control and community versus isolated ambition. The Superman suit's design is a narrative statement woven into fabric. Its brighter, more primary colors are a deliberate visual rebuke to the desaturated, armored looks of recent past. The subtle, woven texture suggests handmade craftsmanship, while the iconic S shield is rendered with a slight embossing, feeling both alien and earned. Most importantly, it looks like a uniform one fights to protect in, not just with, symbolizing the ideals it represents rather than just the power it contains. Michael Giacchino's musical tapestry is crucial for navigating the film's tonal landscape. Clark's theme, often carried by piano and warm strings, speaks to his humility and heart. The full Superman fanfare, with its triumphant brass, is used sparingly, reserved for moments of pure, selfless heroism to maximize its emotional impact. Luthor's motif, built on atonal strings and synthetic pulses, is the sound of calculated dehumanization, creating an audible chill whenever he dominates a scene. The film's structural pacing demonstrates a confidence in its character-driven approach. It allows lengthy sequences dedicated to Clark's daily routines at the planet, his conversations with Martha, and Lois's investigative legwork. This investment makes the superheroic elements feel emergent from a real world, rather than the world being a cardboard stage for the spectacle. The third act payoff resonates because we understand precisely what and who Superman is risking everything to save. The media's role within the story is a sophisticated exploration of modern myth-making. Television pundits, social media feeds, and newspaper headlines are woven throughout, showing the rapid construction of competing narratives around the Superman question. This satirical element never feels heavy-handed, instead providing a believable ecosystem of public opinion that Luthor expertly manipulates and that Lois courageously challenges, making the fight for truth a central, dynamic battleground. The core philosophical debate is dramatized through compelling character contrasts. Luthor sees humanity as a flawed product to be perfected through ruthless competition and elite guidance. The Kents, and by extension Lois, see humanity as inherently valuable, worthy of protection precisely because of its fragile, collaborative beauty. Superman, caught between these poles, becomes a living experiment, his every action proof that hope and help are not inhibitors of progress but its ultimate expressions. The sensory experience of Clark's powers is rendered with immersive subjectivity. Sound design muffles and focuses to simulate his super hearing, zeroing in on a single cry for help amid urban chaos. Visual effects blur and layer to portray his X-ray vision as an overwhelming flood of information he must ethically parse. These choices emphasize that his abilities are not just tools, but profound responsibilities requiring constant moral and mental discipline to wield justly. Martha Kent's presence provides the film's crucial emotional warmth and resilient heart. Her scenes with Clark are devoid of melodrama, instead filled with the quiet understanding of shared loss and purpose. She represents the enduring power of home, not as a place to escape from, but as a spiritual center to return to for strength. Her unwavering belief in her son's goodness is the emotional counterweight to Jor-El's cold programming, a reminder that love is the most powerful shaping force of all. Ultraman, as Kryptonian biological weapon, embodies a terrifying literalism, superpower without morality, might without right. His design, perhaps a corrupted mirror of Superman's suit with darker hues and sharper lines, visually communicates his purpose as a blunt instrument. Their fight is thus a brutalist ballet, a clash of identical powers driven by diametrically opposed wills, ultimately proving that it is consciousness, choice, and compassion that define a hero, not genetic capacity alone. The engineer represents humanity's Faustian bargain with power, a being who traded her organic self for technologic supremacy. Her metallic, fluid form is a direct contrast to Superman's alien biology, posing the question of what truly defines humanity. Her allegiance to Luthor underscores the film's warning that the pursuit of progress, when divorced from ethics, leads to a loss of soul. Her defeat symbolizes the rejection of a future where humanity must mutilate its essence to compete. The climax's resolution cleverly integrates every major character's arc into the victory. Superman provides the physical power, Lois and the planet deliver the public truth. The Justice Gang offers crucial tactical support, and even Martha's faith provides the spiritual fortitude. This collective triumph reinforces the film's thesis that saving the world is a communal effort, and that trust, once broken, must be rebuilt through transparent action and verified evidence, not blind faith. The final act's denouement provides profound emotional closure without simplistic answers. Clark, at Jonathan's grave, speaks not of victory, but of continued commitment, acknowledging the struggle to choose kindness every day. The subsequent sunrise with Lois over Metropolis is not an ending, but a hopeful beginning for their partnership. Superman is shown not as a finished symbol, but as a man who has fully integrated his conflict into a sustained, lifelong mission. The DCU world building is executed with elegant restraint. Mentions of other heroes and global events are presented as background texture. A tabloid headline about Batman, a news ticker about an Atlantean ambassador. This creates a thrilling sense of depth and history, suggesting a world already rich with stories that have been unfolding parallel to this one. It invites curiosity without demanding it, making the universe feel expansive and alive. The mid-credits scene is a masterpiece of minimalist foreshadowing. The shadowy figure visiting Luthor, known only as the Founder, speaks with an authority that even the subdued billionaire respects. Their conversation about recruiting a better class of adversary hints at a grand, multi-film strategy. This moment promises that future conflicts will be intellectually orchestrated, challenging Superman not just physically, but on a conceptual level, raising the stakes for the entire universe. The film's lasting impact stems from its successful fusion of Silver Age wonder with modern psychological depth. It proves that a story can be both brightly optimistic and intellectually rigorous, that a character can be powerfully strong and endearingly vulnerable. By centering Superman's humanity, his capacity for love, doubt, and conscious choice, it delivers a timeless message about the active, daily choice to be good, securing its place as a definitive and cohesive foundation for the stories to come. The thematic exploration of legacy versus self-determination reaches its apex in the film's central confrontation, where Superman must literally battle a distorted version of his own potential future. This conflict transcends physical combat, becoming a poignant metaphor for every individual's struggle against inherited burdens or expected paths. The resolution affirms that the most heroic act is often the quiet, internal one of rejecting a pre-written destiny to author one's own moral code. This message resonates deeply in a contemporary context, championing self-definition over deterministic programming. Lois Lane's character arc is meticulously crafted to avoid the trope of the skeptical journalist won over by charm. Instead, she is convinced by evidence and ethical consistency. Her trust in Superman is earned through his actions, aligning with her own rigorous standards of justice, not through romantic affection. This professional integrity forms the bedrock of their relationship, establishing a partnership of equals where her role as the world's foremost chronicler of Superman is as vital as his role as its protector. Her agency remains uncompromised, making her a formidable force in the narrative. Lex Luthor's methodology presents a new archetype of cinematic villainy, where the primary weapons are algorithms, media narratives, and psychological warfare rather than brute force. His genius lies in turning Superman's greatest strengths, his transparency and desire to help, into perceived weaknesses and threats. This approach critiques a modern reality where public perception can be engineered and truth can be drowned out by a louder, well-funded narrative. Luthor's defeat, therefore, requires not just physical overpowering, but the meticulous restoration of factual truth. The film's reinterpretation of Kryptonian lore serves to isolate Clark emotionally while strengthening his thematic purpose. By making his birth parents' intentions hostile, it severs any nostalgic longing for a lost utopia, forcing him to find his home and family entirely on Earth. This narrative choice intensifies his immigrant story, highlighting the conscious choice to adopt and defend the values of his new world over those of his old. It transforms his heroism from a birthright into a hard-won philosophy. The moral philosophy of Jonathan Kent is presented not as simplistic idealism, but as a pragmatic and resilient form of strength. His lessons to young Clark focus on control, patience, and the profound responsibility that accompanies power. These scenes avoid sentimentality, instead showing the difficult, day-to-day work of building character. Jonathan's legacy is the unshakable ethical framework that allows Clark to weather the storm of Luthor's manipulations and his own horrifying lineage. Cinematographic choices consistently use light and shadow to externalize internal states. Superman is often filmed in soft, open light, emphasizing his transparency and hope. Luthor, conversely, is framed within the sharp geometric shadows of his office or the sterile light of laboratories, visualizing his constrained and clinical worldview. In moments of doubt, Clark is shown in half-light, visually torn between these two opposing visual philosophies, until his final choices bring him fully into the light. David Corenswet's interpretation finds unique depth in the character's moments of public interaction. His demeanor when comforting civilians or addressing crowds carries a gentle, deliberate humility that disarms fear. This contrasts with the focused intensity he brings to confrontations with Luthor's enforcers. The performance masterfully conveys that for this Superman, communication and connection are themselves superpowers to be honed, essential to his mission of building trust. Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane possesses a kinetic energy that makes every scene in the Daily Planet crackle with purpose. Her dialogue is sharp and probing, devoid of unnecessary exposition, revealing a mind constantly processing information. The romance with Clark unfolds in glances and shared silences as much as in words, building a relationship rooted in mutual recognition of each other's core integrity. She loves not just the superhero, but the earnest reporter whose moral compass matches her own. Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor exudes a terrifying, placid arrogance. His lack of theatrical rage makes his occasional flashes of pettiness, like a slight sneer at a negative headline, all the more revealing. He views people as variables and Superman as an equation to be solved, a flaw in his otherwise perfect model of human society. Holt captures the pathos of a brilliant man whose greatest failure is his utter inability to comprehend selfless love, which he dismisses as a strategic weakness. The integration of the Justice Gang allows the film to explore the political and bureaucratic dimensions of a world with superheroes. Their initial intervention frames Superman as a destabilizing unilateral actor, raising legitimate questions about oversight and collateral damage. Their arc from regulators to allies demonstrates that systemic checks and individual heroism are not mutually exclusive, but necessary partners in a complex world. This adds a layer of geopolitical realism to the fantastical premise that Krypto's narrative function extends to being a bridge between Clark's alien nature and his earthly experiences. The dog's unconditional love is unaffected by the grand debates about Superman's role, offering pure, uncomplicated companionship. In action, Krypto's playful yet effective combat style contrasts with the more brutal methods of the villains, symbolizing that protection can be joyful and instinctual, not just a grim duty. He is the heart of the Superman mythos made manifest in a furry, flying form. The film's action set pieces are designed with a clear geographic and structural logic, allowing the audience to always understand the stakes and spatial relationships. The battle in Metropolis showcases Superman's multitasking heroism, constantly diverting from the main fight to prevent secondary disasters. This creates a dynamic, fluid sense of peril that emphasizes the chaos of a real crisis, where the villain is only one part of the problem to be managed. James Gunn's signature is most evident in the ensemble's character-driven humor and the vibrant, almost tactile production design. However, the film exhibits a newfound emotional maturity, allowing poignant moments to land without a quippy deflation. The tone is one of sincere wonder, where the humor arises from the characters' personalities, like Guy Gardner's abrasive confidence or Jimmy Olsen's enthusiastic awe, rather than from winking at the audience about the silliness of the genre. The production design of Smallville is equally crucial, rendered with a textured, lived-in authenticity that feels timeless. The Kent farm is not a nostalgic diorama, but a working, slightly worn place of genuine warmth. This environment visually represents the rootedness that grounds Superman, its earthy realism standing in stark contrast to the sleek surfaces of Metropolis and the alien geometries of Kryptonian technology. It is the visual anchor for his humanity. Superman's costume evolution within the narrative is subtle, yet meaningful. Scenes hint at Martha's role in its maintenance or modification, perhaps adding the familial crest from the baby blanket. This tactile connection to his human family makes the suit a symbol of integration, a uniform that literally weaves together his Kryptonian heritage and his earthbound upbringing. It is armor not because of its material, but because of what it represents. Michael Giacchino's score employs leitmotifs with strategic brilliance. The motif for Clark's humanity, often a simple piano line, weaves in and out of the larger Superman fanfare, sometimes overcoming it in quiet moments. The music for Luthor is notably devoid of melody, consisting of atmospheric tension and rhythmic pulses, mirroring his view of the world as a system to be controlled rather than a story to be experienced. The narrative's three-act structure mirrors Clark's psychological journey, establishing his public role, deconstructing his personal history, and synthesizing a new, self-authored identity. The pacing allows each supporting character their necessary narrative function without feeling episodic. The plot advances through character decisions, not external incidents, ensuring the story remains a compelling internal drama expressed through external, superhuman conflict. The film's treatment of media extends to depicting the Daily Planet as a beacon of traditional journalism in a digital age of hot takes. Perry White's gruff insistence on facts and sourcing positions the newspaper as a key protagonist in the fight for truth. This elevates the profession from a simple plot device to a vital civic institution, and Lois's success is a vindication of rigorous, ethical reporting in combating disinformation. The philosophical tension between Luthor and Superman is framed as two opposing theories of evolution. Luthor believes in a forced, directed evolution through competition and technological transcendence. Superman embodies a cooperative evolution, where strength is used to lift others, creating a safer environment for moral and social growth. The film argues that true progress is measured not by the height of our towers, but by the depth of our empathy. Clark's sensory experiences are portrayed with a focus on the emotional toll of his powers. His superhearing is not just a tool, it is a constant bombardment of the world's pain, from distant cries to private griefs. Learning to focus this ability represents his moral development, choosing to listen, to engage, and to help, rather than shutting out the overwhelming noise. This transforms his powers from a suite of abilities into a covenant with humanity. Martha Kent's strength is portrayed as quiet resilience and profound emotional intelligence. Her scenes provide the film's moral and emotional center of gravity. She understands the weight Clark carries not as a mother of a god, but as a mother of a son with an impossible job. Her love is active, providing not just solace but wise counsel, reminding him that seeking help and sharing burdens are acts of strength, not limitations. Ultraman's existential threat is magnified by his lack of dialogue or personality. He is pure, silent, destructive programming. This makes him more terrifying than a ranting villain, as he is a force of nature with a singular, grim purpose. Defeating him requires Superman to tap into something his clone lacks entirely: the passionate, emotional will to protect something beyond himself. The victory is thus ideological, proving that sentient love is more powerful than programmed purpose. The engineer's tragedy is her loss of identity in pursuit of power. Her metallic form, while formidable, is a prison that has erased her former humanity. She serves as a dark parallel to Superman's own integration of identities. Where he harmonizes his dual heritage, she has allowed one aspect, the technological, to completely consume the other. Her fate is a cautionary tale about the cost of surrendering one's essence for might. The climax's triumph is multifaceted, ensuring each character's contribution is essential. Lois publishes the exposé that breaks Luthor's narrative. The Justice Gang contains the wider chaos, proving the value of a superhero ecosystem. Clark provides the physical might and the moral stand. This collective effort reinforces the film's thesis that a healthy society is a collaborative organism, and that the man of tomorrow needs the people of today to build a better future. The concluding scenes masterfully avoid cliché by focusing on quiet resolution over grandiose celebration. Clark's visit to the farm is a moment of peaceful reconciliation with his past and his choices. The final shot, not of Superman soaring in triumph, but of Clark and Lois looking toward a new day from the planet's rooftop, suggests their work, as a reporter and a hero, is just beginning. It's a promise of partnership and ongoing commitment. The DCU's foundational work is achieved through implication rather than explicit cameo. The world feels populated and active because we hear about other heroes dealing with their own challenges elsewhere. This creates a sense of immense scale and potential, making Metropolis feel like one city in a world rich with stories. It's world building through confident restraint, trusting the audience to understand the larger canvas. The mid-credits scene's power lies in its minimalism and implication. The Founder's calm authority suggests a villain of a higher order, one who sees Luthor not as a peer, but as a promising asset. This shifts the antagonist paradigm from personal vendetta to a systemic, institutional threat, promising future conflicts that will challenge the very concepts of justice and heroism on a conceptual level, expanding the stakes for the entire DCU. The film's ultimate success is its tonal and thematic coherence, binding bright optimism with serious philosophical inquiry. It manages to feel both nostalgically classic and bracingly modern by returning Superman to his core ethical principles while examining them under the harsh light of contemporary anxieties about power, media, and identity. It establishes a clear and compelling thesis that in a cynical world, choosing hope is the most powerful act of all. This provides a rock-solid, ideologically clear foundation for all subsequent stories in this new universe. The film's visual language extends its thematic reach through the deliberate use of color psychology, where Kryptonian technology is often bathed in cold, sterile blues and whites, emphasizing its logical but lifeless origin. In contrast, scenes in Smallville and at the Daily Planet glow with warm ambers and earthy tones, visually coding humanity with warmth and organic vitality. Superman's suit becomes a brilliant point of synthesis, a bold splash of primary color that literally and figuratively brings light into both worlds, symbolizing his role as a unifier and a beacon. The narrative's treatment of power dynamics is particularly nuanced in its depiction of Superman's relationship with governmental and military authorities. He is not an unchecked sovereign, but a conscientious actor who understands the need for dialogue, even when he must ultimately act outside formal channels to save lives. This friction is portrayed as healthy and necessary, avoiding simplistic portrayals of either corrupt institutions or infallible heroes. It presents a mature vision of superheroism operating within, but not wholly constrained by, the complexities of the modern nation-state. Lois Lane's intellectual journey mirrors a classic detective story, where her clues are data streams, financial records, and psychological profiles rather than physical evidence. Her breakthrough often comes from connecting disparate pieces of information that others, including Superman with his sensory powers, might overlook. This positions her as the narrative's true sleuth, solving the mystery of Luthor's plot through human intuition and deductive rigor, proving that truth can be uncovered by mind as well as by might. Lex Luthor's backstory is wisely left largely unexplored, with only subtle hints suggesting a lifetime of being the smartest person in any room, leading to a corrosive isolation and contempt for those he perceives as lesser. This absence of a traumatic origin makes him more chilling. His villainy is a product of unchecked intellect and privilege, not past injury. He represents the danger of brilliance devoid of empathy, a warning that the greatest threats may come not from the depths of suffering, but from the heights of arrogant success. The film's sound design is a character in itself, especially in its treatment of Superman's flight. The sonic signature shifts from a powerful, resonating boom in moments of urgent rescue to a near-silent, graceful whisper when he simply observes the city he loves. This auditory contrast beautifully illustrates the dual nature of his power: overwhelming force when necessary and gentle, unimposing presence when possible. It's a subtle but constant reminder of his conscious control and respect for the world below. Clark Kent's journalistic persona is portrayed not as a bumbling disguise, but as a genuine and effective expression of his values. His reporting is driven by the same desire to help and uncover truth that motivates Superman, just channeled through a notepad and a press pass. This alignment makes the dual identity more coherent and respectable. Both roles are facets of the same mission to serve the public good, one through action, the other through information. It eliminates any cognitive dissonance for the audience. The portrayal of Metropolis's citizens is refreshingly varied and avoids mob mentality. We see individuals reacting to Superman with awe, skepticism, religious fervor, and simple gratitude. This mosaic of public opinion adds verisimilitude and prevents the city from becoming a monolithic chorus. It underscores that Superman's true work is not just defeating monsters, but winning over one heart and mind at a time, building trust through a multitude of individual acts of witnessed kindness. The thematic resonance of the immigrant story is most potent in small, cultural details. Martha teaching Clark human traditions, his slight awkwardness with certain social norms, his profound appreciation for simple human experiences like a home-cooked meal. These moments aren't labeled as allegory, but are woven into the fabric of his character, making the theme felt rather than explained. It's a story of conscious assimilation, where the adopted child chooses the soul of his new home over the legacy of his old one. The film's pacing allows for downtime that is critically important for building the romantic relationship between Clark and Lois. Their bond develops during late nights at the office, shared silences over research, and conversations that blend professional curiosity with personal revelation. This slow burn, set against the backdrop of a looming global crisis, makes their connection feel earned and deeply rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose, rather than narrative convenience. The design of Kryptonian elements, from the scout ship to the holographic recordings of Jor-El, avoids the crystalline aesthetic of previous films. Instead, it opts for a more biomechanical, almost dauntingly complex look, emphasizing a technology so advanced it feels alien and unfathomable. This visual choice reinforces the otherness of Clark's origins and makes his rejection of that world's philosophy a rejection of its cold, imposing physicality in favor of Earth's softer, more chaotic beauty. The ethical weight of Jonathan Kent's advice is tested not just in Clark's life, but in the film's very plot construction. The story presents multiple scenarios where revealing his powers earlier or acting more aggressively might have solved a short-term problem, but at the cost of principle. The narrative vindicates Jonathan's caution and wisdom, showing that patience and restraint, though difficult, build a more durable and trustworthy heroism than reactive force ever could. David Corenswet's physicality in the role communicates a specific history. His Superman moves with the grounded assurance of someone who grew up doing farm chores. His strength feels earned through use, not just endowed. This contrasts with Ultraman's more mechanically precise and inhuman movement patterns, visually distinguishing the hero who developed his powers within a human context from the weapon that was manufactured with them. Rachel Brosnahan brings a layered vulnerability to Lois that exists alongside her fierce determination. Her fear is not for herself, but for the potential corruption of a truly good thing, Superman, by the world's cynicism or her own potential misjudgment. This internal conflict adds depth, showing that her pursuit of the story is also a personal test of her own ideals and her capacity to believe in something extraordinary. Nicholas Holt's Luthor exhibits a telling physical disconnect. He is often seen watching Superman on screens or through windows, physically separated from the human messiness he seeks to control. This staging emphasizes his role as a manipulator who prefers to engage with the world at a remove, through proxies and technology, making his final, direct confrontation with Superman a significant and personal violation of his preferred methods. The Justice Gang's dynamic provides necessary comic relief, but of a specific, character-based variety. Their disagreements feel like the credible tensions of a workplace team with clashing personalities and methodologies forced to collaborate. This grounds their superheroics in relatable interpersonal dynamics, making their world feel functional and lived in, rather than merely a colorful collection of cameos waiting for their own spin-offs. Crypto's intelligence is portrayed as distinctly canine rather than human. He understands commands and emotions, but reacts with animalistic loyalty and instinct. This keeps him from becoming a talking sidekick, preserving his role as a symbol of pure, uncomplicated devotion. His actions in battle are cooperative but instinctual, like a highly trained working dog, which maintains the emotional purity of his bond with Clark. The film's most thrilling action sequence might be its quietest, a prolonged scene of Superman thwarting a natural disaster, like a devastating flood. Here, the enemy is physics itself, and the heroism is shown in tireless logistical rescue work, building levees, moving stranded populations, shoring up infrastructure. This sequence is crucial for demonstrating that his heroism is fundamentally about service and mitigation, not just conflict with a sentient foe. James Gunn's experience with ensemble storytelling shines in how efficiently each supporting character is established. With minimal screen time, we understand Guy Gardner's bluster, Mr. Terrific's analytical mind, and Hawkgirl's warrior ethos. This efficiency doesn't make them shallow, but rather suggests a full history existing just off-screen, contributing to the rich tapestry of the DCU without halting the main plot for extended introductions. The production design of Luthor's penthouse is a masterclass in character expression through environment. It is less a home and more a museum of his own ego and acquisitions, filled with priceless art and artifacts that feel isolated and contextless, much like Luthor himself. The space is imposing but ultimately empty, a visual metaphor for his soul, a curated collection of achievements without human warmth. The evolution of the Superman theme within Giacchino's score mirrors the character's arc. In early flights, it's tentative and searching. During the crisis of identity, it is fragmented and intercut with the ominous Kryptonian motifs. In the final act, it returns triumphant and fully orchestrated, now integrated with a softer, more romantic theme for Lois, symbolizing that his heroism is now complete and interwoven with his human connections. The film's structure avoids the standard origin story, trapped by beginning in media's residential with an established Superman, trusting the audience to understand the basics. His origins are then revealed in fragments and flashbacks that are motivated by the present-tense plot, making the exposition feel earned and psychologically relevant. This approach treats the audience as intelligent collaborators in the story. The role of Perry White is reimagined for the modern media landscape. He is not just a yelling editor, but a savvy manager navigating declining print revenues and the 24-hour news cycle, who still insists on journalistic standards. His support of Lois is a professional bet on truth over traffic, making him a minor hero in his own right, defending the principles of his profession under economic pressure. The philosophical conflict is beautifully distilled in a key dialogue where Luthor posits that humanity, left to struggle, would eventually reach the stars on its own, and that Superman is a cosmic welfare check that makes them lazy. Superman's rebuttal is not verbal but embodied in his actions. He doesn't give humanity answers, he protects the space for them to find their own, acting as a safeguard, not a solution. This frames him as a guardian of potential, not a dictator of outcomes. Clark's use of his X-ray vision is carefully limited by the film's own ethical code. He uses it to find people in rubble or diagnose a structural collapse, but the screenplay pointedly avoids having him use it to invade personal privacy for convenience or gain. This self-imposed limitation is a powerful, unspoken character detail that showcases his inherent respect for individual boundaries and autonomy. Martha Kent's most powerful scene may be one where she says nothing at all, a moment where she simply watches news footage of her son in danger, her face a canvas of fear, pride, and unwavering love. This silent performance communicates the profound cost and courage of the Kent family's sacrifice, reminding us that behind the symbol is a mother's heart, constantly braced for a loss only she could truly fathom. Ultraman's defeat is not achieved by greater power, but by superior strategy and leverage of environment. Superman uses his knowledge of Metropolis, his rapport with the Justice Gang, and his understanding of physics to outmaneuver the more brutally direct clone. This reinforces that victory comes from a connection to the world he protects, a resource his disconnected, purposeless double cannot access or comprehend. The engineer's final moment could be one of tragic realization, a flicker of her lost humanity recognizing its own imprisonment within the metal. This subtle beat, if present, adds a profound layer of pathos to her character, transforming her from a mere foe into a cautionary tale of transhumanist folly. It serves as a dark mirror to Clark's successful integration of his dual nature. The film's denouement includes a subtle but significant moment where Superman, after the battle, is seen helping ordinary emergency workers with cleanup, lifting heavy debris for them. This post-game heroism is vital, showing that his commitment extends beyond the dramatic climax to the long, unglamorous work of recovery and rebuilding. It defines heroism as a continuum, not an event. The final shot's composition is deliberately balanced. Clark and Lois are framed not as a tiny couple against a vast city, but as integral parts of its skyline. They are positioned looking forward, shoulder to shoulder, with the city sprawled before them. This image rejects isolation. It is a portrait of partnership and engaged stewardship, promising that their future work will be a joint project. The world-building extends to economic implications through LexCorp's omnipresence. Its logos are on satellites, medical tech, and infrastructure, visually establishing Luthor's deep societal penetration and the challenge of confronting a villain who is not an outsider, but the ultimate insider, whose products and services are woven into the very fabric of daily life. This makes his threat systemic and complex. The mid-credits scene's dialogue is sparse but loaded. The founder refers to ideological contamination and the need for a purer opposition. This language suggests an antagonist with a rigid, almost theological belief system regarding heroism and power, positioning the coming conflict as a war of ideologies, a battle for the very soul of what a hero should be in this new universe. The film's greatest achievement may be its tonal consistency in championing earnestness. In an age of cynicism, it dares to present a good man struggling to remain good, not a brooding man struggling to become effective. This recenters the Superman mythos on its original, timeless appeal. The inspiration found in unwavering compassion, making it not just a successful reboot, but a necessary cultural realignment for the superhero genre. It stands as a coherent quality blueprint, built on the timeless foundation of hope, for the epic stories that are destined to follow. The film's dialogue consistently reinforces its central themes through a lyrical, almost philosophical quality in key exchanges, distinguishing it from more expository superhero scripts. Conversations between Clark and Jonathan are sparse but weighted with moral gravity, while Lois's verbal sparring with both Clark and Perry White crackles with intellectual energy. Luthor's monologues are chilling not for their volume, but for their calm, logical deconstruction of hope, making the verbal battlefield as compelling as the physical one. A subtle but profound narrative thread explores the concept of seeing in its many forms. Superman sees the world with literal X-ray vision, but more importantly, he sees its inherent beauty and potential. Lois sees through deception to uncover hard truths. Luthor sees only systems, threats, and variables. Martha Kent sees the heart of her son beneath the power. This motif of perception ties each character's journey together, defining their relationship to truth and defining heroism as the capacity to see and act upon the fundamental good in others. The film avoids a monolithic portrayal of authority by presenting a spectrum of institutional responses to Superman. Some government figures are paranoid, others cautiously cooperative, and a few are quietly grateful. This nuanced approach prevents the story from becoming a simplistic anti-establishment fable and instead paints a realistic picture of how a disruptive, benevolent force would be metabolized by global bureaucracies, with confusion, fear, and gradual, grudging acceptance. Clark's process of building his Superman identity is shown to be iterative and practical. We see hints of earlier, less effective costume attempts or moments where he learned to control his heat vision through trial and traumatic error. These subtle hints of a recent training period make his current mastery feel earned and grounded. It suggests a 3-year journey of self-taught heroism, adding a layer of relatable amateurism that has only recently evolved into polished professionalism. The soundscape of Metropolis is a carefully crafted character. The distant wail of sirens, the hum of traffic, the murmur of crowds. These sounds are ever-present but dialed down when we are in Clark's point of view, allowing his superhearing to selectively focus. This auditory design puts the audience inside his sensory experience, making us feel the constant cognitive load of his powers and the conscious choice he must make to filter chaos for a single cry for help. Lois Lane's apartment is a visual extension of her character. Organized chaos, with towering stacks of books and newspapers, a sprawling murder board of connected evidence, and a single, well-used espresso machine. This environment speaks to a mind constantly connecting dots and a life wholly dedicated to her work. It feels lived in and authentic, a stark contrast to the sterile spaces occupied by Luther, visually championing the fertile mess of truth-seeking over the cold order of control. The film's treatment of Clark's invulnerability is psychologically astute. While he is physically resistant, he is not emotionally numb. The impact of blows from Ultraman doesn't injure him, but visibly staggers and disturbs him, registering as a violent violation. This makes the fight scenes feel impactful on a character level, as we see Superman's sense of safety and bodily autonomy being challenged, adding a layer of psychological vulnerability to the physical conflict. The cultural impact of Superman within the film's world is shown through mundane yet telling details. Children wearing homemade capes, street artists painting murals, theologians being interviewed on news panels. This demonstrates that his presence is sparking a cultural conversation, inspiring art, debate, and faith. He is becoming a modern myth in real time, and the film is interested in that process of myth-making, both its beautiful inspirations and its potential for dangerous deification. The romance subplot is advanced through shared vulnerability, not just shared adventure. A pivotal scene might involve Clark confessing a childhood memory of the overwhelming fear his powers once caused him, or Lois admitting her terror that her reporting could get someone innocent hurt. These exchanges of personal fear and doubt build intimacy far more effectively than any generic date scene, rooting their love in mutual trust and the sharing of hidden selves. The design of Kryptonian script and interfaces within the scout ship is intentionally alien and non-intuitive. Clark cannot simply read it. He must interact with it kinetically, causing glyphs to flow and reform. This emphasizes that his understanding of his heritage is not innate, but must be actively, physically deciphered, mirroring his broader journey of piecing together an identity from fragments of two worlds. It makes his exploration of his past an active, tactile process. Jonathan Kent's philosophy is proven correct in the film's third act not by Superman's victory, but by the method of it. The triumph relies on the trust he has built with Lois, the cooperation he has fostered with the Justice Gang, and the credibility he has earned with the public. These are the human tools Jonathan advocated for: connection, patience, and integrity, and they are shown to be more decisive than raw power in defeating a plot built on lies and isolation. The physical contrast between Cornsweet and Holt is used to thematic effect. Cornsweet's Superman has the build of a natural athlete, a swimmer or a farmhand, suggesting strength developed through use. Holt's Luther is lean and groomed, a body maintained for appearance and intellect, not labor. This visual dichotomy reinforces their ideological clash. The strength that serves versus the intellect that seeks to dominate, the laborer versus the privileged overseer. Brosnahan's performance captures Lois's professional ruthlessness without sacrificing her warmth. She can eviscerate a source with a pointed question in one scene and show tender concern for a traumatized witness in the next. This range ensures she is never reduced to a bossy stereotype. She is a complex professional whose aggression is in the service of empathy, using her sharp mind to give voice to the vulnerable. Holt delivers Luther's most threatening lines with a near whisper and a faint, condescending smile. His declaration that a god among men cannot be a friend to men is not a shout but a calm, stated axiom. This underplayed delivery makes the character feel more intellectually convinced, and thus more immovable. A man who believes he is sharing obvious truths with emotional children, which is far creepier than any rant could be. The Justice Gang's technology and aesthetics are distinct from Superman's alien biology or Luther's sleek corporate tech. Mr. Terrific's T-spheres are intricate and handmade feeling. Hawkgirl's mace has an ancient, mystical quality. This visual diversity in heroism reinforces that there are multiple valid paths to power and justice in this universe, and that Superman's Kryptonian abilities are just one note in a broader symphony of heroic expression. Krypto's presence allows for moments of pure, wordless storytelling. A scene where the dog rests his head on a despondent Clark's knee communicates more than dialogue ever could. His animal empathy provides comfort that bypasses Clark's intellectual crises, offering solace on a purely emotional level. He is a living security blanket, a touchstone of unconditional love from a simpler time in Clark's life. One of the film's most suspenseful sequences might involve no villain at all, but rather Superman trying to perform a delicate, microscopic surgery with his heat vision in a disaster zone. The tension comes from the precision required, the fear of a mistake, and the absolute focus he must employ. This showcases a different type of heroism, one of meticulous care and controlled application of power, where too much force is as dangerous as too little. Gunn's experience allows him to stage crowd scenes with particular vitality, making Metropolis feel densely populated with individuals. In scenes of chaos or awe, we see a mosaic of specific reactions: a child pointing, an old woman praying, a skeptic filming on his phone. This directorial choice ensures the city never feels like a backdrop of digital extras, but like a society of individuals whose collective experience matters. Luther's personal quarters, in contrast to his public spaces, might reveal a surprising austerity, a single painting, a first edition of a philosophical text. This suggests his materialism is for show, and his true self is ascetic and cerebral, obsessed with ideas and legacy over physical luxury. It adds a layer of monasticism to his evil, framing it as a perverted form of intellectual purity. Giacchino's love theme for Clark and Lois is introduced not in a romantic scene, but subtly woven into the score during moments of collaborative problem-solving or silent understanding. This cleverly ties their romance directly to their partnership in truth and justice. The theme then swells fully when they finally acknowledge their feelings, making the musical payoff feel earned by their shared journey, not just their attraction. The film's flashback structure is motivated by emotional triggers in the present. The sound of a wheat field might cue a memory of Jonathan, or the sight of a struggling spacecraft in Luther's lab might trigger a fragmented memory of Krypton's fall. This makes the past feel psychologically alive and pressing, an internal landscape Clark is constantly navigating, rather than a sterile info dump for the audience. Perry White's most defining moment may be when he defends Lois's risky story to his corporate superiors, putting his job on the line. This act of institutional courage mirrors Superman's physical courage, showing that heroism exists at every level. He is the guardian of the platform, just as Superman is the guardian of the city, and both roles require risking something precious for the greater good. The film subtly explores the economics of heroism. The massive property damage from battles with Ultraman has insurance and political repercussions that are acknowledged. This isn't the focus, but its inclusion adds a layer of real-world consequence that most films gloss over. It quietly asks the question of who pays for salvation, and positions Superman as someone who would be deeply concerned with that answer, further illustrating his holistic sense of responsibility. Clark's relationship with the sun is portrayed with a subtle, almost photosynthetic quality. In a moment of respite, we might see him unconsciously turn his face towards sunlight, with a slight, barely perceptible glow emanating from his skin as he absorbs its energy. This visual cue biologically roots his power in a natural, cosmic process, distinguishing it from magic or technology and connecting him fundamentally to this solar system. Martha Kent's strength is shown in her daily life, running the farm alone, dealing with contractors, maintaining a home that is a sanctuary. She is not waiting for her son to visit. She has a full, resilient life. This independence makes her support more powerful because it is given from a position of strength, not neediness. She is a pillar in her own right, and Clark draws strength from her stability, not her vulnerability. Ultraman's movements are efficient and wasteful simultaneously, brutally direct but causing massive collateral damage because he has no concept of value for anything around him. This contrasts with Superman's economy of motion, which is always mindful of context. The fight choreography thus becomes a visual argument between mindful preservation and mindless eradication, between a surgeon's scalpel and a wrecking ball. The engineer's defeat could come from a vulnerability inherent in her design, perhaps a need for a rare coolant or a susceptibility to a specific electromagnetic frequency that Mr. Terrific discovers. This makes her downfall a victory of applied human intelligence over static alien technology, reinforcing that teamwork and brains can overcome even the most advanced hybridized threat. In the aftermath, a scene showing Superman personally meeting with families who lost homes or loved ones in the battle, offering not just apologies but tangible help to rebuild, would be character-defining. It shows he understands his responsibility extends beyond stopping the threat to addressing its consequences, embodying a heroism of follow-through and accountability that is rarely depicted. The final aerial shot, pulling back from Clark and Lois on the roof, could slowly reveal other parts of the city coming back to life, lights flickering on, traffic resuming. This visual metaphor presents them as the calm center from which recovery radiates, a stabilizing force. The city is not just below them, it is actively reviving around them, with their partnership symbolically at the heart of its resilience. The film's broader universe is hinted at through scientific or academic dialogue. A news report might reference the star labs s.t.a.r. lab anomaly in Central City, or a throwaway line about unusual tectonic activity in the Atlantic. This seeds future stories in the language of this world's natural sciences and current events, making the fantastic feel like a part of its evolving reality. The founder's phrasing in the mid-credits scene is deliberately archaic and cult-like. Words like purity, legacy, and the sacred order of things suggest a villain with a medieval, almost Templar mindset applied to a world of metas. This sets up a fascinating clash: Superman, the champion of a progressive, inclusive future, versus an antagonist rooted in a rigid, hierarchical past, fighting to restore a natural order he believes Superman has shattered. Ultimately, the film's coherence stems from its unwavering focus on Superman as a moral actor first and a physical powerhouse second. Every plot point, character interaction, and visual choice serves to test, define, or celebrate his ethical core. This creates a narrative through-line of remarkable purity, where spectacle is always in service of theme. It delivers a superhero story that feels purposeful and whole, a confident declaration of what this character means and why he endures, providing an exceptionally stable and quality foundation for the expansive mythology to come. The film's narrative architecture expertly avoids a linear problem solution plot in favor of a thematic puzzle where each character represents a different philosophy of power. Superman embodies altruistic power, Luthor embodies controlling power, the Justice Gang embodies institutionalized power, and Lois embodies the power of truth. The climax brings these philosophies into direct collision, with the resolution proving that integrated, transparent power is the most resilient. This structural choice elevates the film from a simple adventure to a compelling ideological symposium. Clark's daily routine at the Daily Planet is portrayed not as a cover, but as a vocation of equal importance to his superheroic work. We see him crafting sentences with care, fact-checking diligently, and finding genuine satisfaction in telling a human story well. This portrayal dissolves the typical dichotomy between the real self and the secret self. Both Clark Kent and Superman are authentic expressions of his desire to connect, help, and understand, just through different mediums. The visual motif of hands is used with powerful consistency throughout the film. Superman's hands are often open, extended in help, or carefully containing his strength. Luthor's hands are usually clasped behind his back or manipulating holograms from a distance, avoiding direct contact. Martha's hands are shown working the earth or mending cloth, representing creation. This subtle visual language communicates each character's relationship with the world, engaged, controlling, or nurturing. The screenplay cleverly inverts the usual liability of a secret identity. Here, Clark's identity as a reporter is an active asset, granting him access to information, locations, and perspectives that Superman could not obtain without intimidation. His journalism directly fuels his heroism, allowing him to investigate Luthor from the inside. This symbiotic relationship makes the dual identity a strategic advantage rather than a narrative complication to be managed. The film's depiction of fear is multifaceted. There is the public's fear of the unknown, Luthor's fear of obsolescence, Clark's fear of his own potential for harm, and Lois's fear of being deceived. Each character's arc involves confronting and overcoming their specific fear, with Superman's journey being about embracing the responsibility that comes with being feared and transmuting that fear into trust through consistent, visible virtue. The sound design for Kryptonian technology employs reversed audio, low-frequency hums, and harmonic dissonance, creating an aura that feels intellectually advanced but emotionally alienating. This sonic landscape makes the scout ship a place of dread and cold revelation, contrasting sharply with the warm, diegetic sounds of Earth. Rustling leaves, bustling newsrooms, and human voices, which are consistently portrayed as chaotic but full of life. Lois Lane's ethical line is tested when she discovers information that could endanger Superman's identity. Her decision to bury that part of the story, not out of affection but out of a recognition that his privacy is a human right unrelated to his public role, is a critical character moment. It defines her integrity as being broader than just publishing every fact. It is about judging what serves the public good versus what merely serves public curiosity. The film explores the concept of legacy through three distinct lenses: the imperial legacy of Krypton that Clark rejects, the moral legacy of Jonathan Kent that he strives to uphold, and the legacy Luthor is trying to build, one of human self-reliance forged in his own image. Superman's ultimate victory is choosing which legacy to inherit and which to define for himself, synthesizing the best of his fathers into a new ideal for a future he will protect. The action set piece involving the engineer showcases a unique type of threat, a fluid, morphing enemy made of billions of programmable particles. Fighting her requires not force but cleverness, using environmental hazards like a coolant spill or a high-voltage transformer to disrupt her cohesion. This forces Superman and the Justice Gang to think tactically and use the city itself as a weapon, emphasizing adaptability over brute strength. Clark's sense of smell is briefly but poignantly showcased. He can smell rain miles away, the unique ozone scent of a specific subway line, or the faint trace of his mother's perfume on a scarf sent from Smallville. This sensory detail deepens his connection to Earth, painting his experience as richly textured and overwhelmingly beautiful, giving him tangible, sensual reasons to love and fight for his adopted world beyond abstract principles. The production design of the Kent farmhouse includes subtle, telling details from Clark's childhood. Faint scuff marks on a doorframe from a growth spurt, a repaired section of porch where he might have accidentally put his foot through the wood. These quiet touches speak volumes about a childhood spent learning control, surrounded by love and patience, making the home a museum of nurturing that visually argues against Krypton's sterile legacy. The film's color grade evolves with the narrative. Early scenes have a bright, almost hyper-real saturation, mirroring Superman's optimistic debut. As Luthor's conspiracy deepens, a cooler, more desaturated palette creeps in, reflecting Clark's doubt and the poisoning of public trust. The final act returns to warmth, but a more mature, earned warmth, the golden hour of sunrise after a long night, symbolizing hope tested and proven durable. Luthor's hatred is given a chilling intellectual basis in a scene where he explains that Superman's existence invalidates human heroism. Why celebrate a firefighter running into a burning building when a being can simply blow the fire out? He frames Superman as the end of human striving, a theological argument for atheism made flesh. This makes him a more formidable foe than one motivated by simple jealousy or greed. The relationship between Clark and his editor, Perry White, is one of professional respect with an undercurrent of unspoken understanding. Perry clearly suspects Clark is more than he seems but chooses not to press, respecting the quality of his reporter's work above the mystery of his frequent disappearances. This dynamic offers a refreshing take on the boss character, one who is shrewd, protective, and values results over rigid conformity. The film introduces the concept of superhero fatigue within its own diegesis. News pundits debate it, citizens complain about traffic delays from superhero battles, and the Justice Gang deals with jurisdictional paperwork. This meta-commentary is handled with a light touch, acknowledging audience skepticism while arguing, through the story's earnestness, that the genre isn't tired. Only certain cynical approaches to it are. Krypto's abilities are shown to have limits. He can be overwhelmed, need to rest, or become disoriented. This prevents him from being a deus ex machina and reinforces that even superpowered allies are not infallible. His limitations create moments of shared vulnerability with Clark, where they must retreat and regroup, emphasizing that perseverance, not instant victory, is the hallmark of their heroism. A crucial quiet moment shows Superman, after a long night, simply sitting on the edge of a skyscraper's gargoyle, not brooding, but quietly watching the city sleep. His expression is one of weary but deep affection. This solitary vigil refutes the idea of the alienated god, instead painting him as a devoted shepherd who finds solace in the peace he provides, recharging his spirit through the tranquility of the protected. Gunn's direction finds beauty in the transition between identities. A single continuous shot might follow Clark rushing into a stairwell as the camera spins around him. And when it reveals him again, the suit is on, his posture has changed, and he bursts out into the sky. These transitions are treated not as a magical change, but as a purposeful, almost ritualistic transformation, the moment where the private man becomes public symbol. Luthor's manipulation of public sentiment is shown through curated video montages played on news loops, highlighting Superman's collateral damage while omitting the lives saved. This is a direct critique of modern media bias and the power of editing to craft narratives. The film's rebuttal is Lois's full-context journalism, advocating for nuance and complete truth in an age of soundbites and outrage algorithms. The theme of integration is physically manifested in the Fortress of Solitude if shown. Rather than a crystalline palace, it might be a natural formation like a cavern, where Kryptonian technology has grown into the rock like crystalline roots, symbolizing the grafting of his alien heritage onto the bedrock of Earth. This visual would perfectly capture the film's core idea of two natures merging into a new, harmonious whole. Superman's flying speed is consciously varied. When time is critical, he breaks the sound barrier with a thunderous boom. When patrolling or traveling, he flies at subsonic speeds, allowing him to perceive and react to the life below. This discretionary use of his power illustrates his mindfulness and consideration, showing he is not just moving through the world, but is actively engaged with it, even at high velocity. Martha Kent's advice to Clark often comes in the form of practical, homespun metaphors. She might compare controlling his power to regulating the pressure in a canning jar, or describe trust as being like a quilt, built one stitch at a time and strong enough to provide warmth. This dialogue grounds the epic stakes in relatable Midwestern wisdom, making her guidance feel timeless and universally applicable. Ultraman's lack of speech is his most terrifying feature. He does not announce his plans or revel in destruction. He simply executes his programming with machine-like efficiency. This makes him an existential horror, a vision of Superman stripped of all empathy, reason, and soul. Defeating him is therefore not about winning an argument, but about proving that a soul is not a decorative add-on, but the essential core of true strength. The aftermath of the final battle includes a scene where construction crews, aided by Superman and the Justice Gang, begin repairs. This day-after focus is vital, shifting the narrative from destruction to reconstruction. It shows heroism as an act of building, not just preventing loss, and positions Superman as a foundational force in the city's physical and social restoration. The film's final line of dialogue is likely not a heroic quip, but a simple, human statement from Clark to Lois, perhaps about what they should do next. This choice emphasizes that the story is about a life being lived, not a statue being unveiled. It ends on a note of forward momentum and daily commitment, closing the epic chapter, but opening the book on their shared future. The broader DCU is seeded through the graffiti in Metropolis's alleyways. A subtle question mark spray-painted on a wall, or the silhouette of a bat carved into a beam, suggests these heroes and villains are already operating in the cultural subconscious. This environmental storytelling builds the universe from the ground up, literally in the city's margins. The Founder's allusion in the mid-credits scene to historical cycles and correcting a divergence suggests a villain who views Superman not as a personal enemy, but as a statistical anomaly in a predetermined timeline. This frames the coming conflict as one between free will and determinism, with Superman, the champion of choice, facing an entity that believes in a fixed, fateful order he has disrupted in its totality. The film constructs a cohesive argument for a specific kind of heroism, one that is strong enough to be vulnerable, powerful enough to serve, and idealistic enough to choose kindness as its operating system. Every scene, character beat, and visual motif reinforces this argument with remarkable discipline. It succeeds not by deconstructing the myth, but by purifying it, returning Superman to his status as a modern parable of moral courage, and in doing so, provides a masterfully coherent and qualitatively assured bedrock for the entire DC universe. The end.